Not fast enough. This is body cam footage.
Surprised by wild hogs. They say their animals are tearing up their lawn.
And now to this, at 4 residents terrorized by wild hogs. They say their animals are tearing up their lawns. At night, the hogs move in large herds, tearing up grasslands, breaking through fences, and leaving long trails of mud across the property.
Exactly in Eric Mendez's view.
They'll come and they'll just take chunks of it.
Experts say Texas is currently home to the largest population of wild hogs in the United States, reproducing at such a rapid rate that many areas are becoming nearly impossible to control. When nature no longer has enough predators to keep them in check, the conflict between humans and wild hogs has become more intense than ever. If we delayed any longer, the damage would almost certainly spiral beyond control. So that same night, we began deploying a trap system throughout the area. The goal was not simply to drive them away temporarily, but to cut off the herd's movement routes before the situation became even more serious. In the thick darkness of the forest bordering the Texas farm, our flashlights illuminated only a few steps ahead. Every movement was quick, precise, and carefully executed. Once everything was in place, we left, leaving the trap sitting silently in the stillness of the forest.
Okay, I actually think that was a good idea, not sweating, because if you...
That night, the first trap was triggered. When we returned early the next morning, we could already hear chaotic noises echoing from inside, even from a considerable distance away. Loud crashes, growls, and violent banging against the steel frame rang through the cold morning fog. As we moved closer, the trapped wild hogs began charging back and forth inside the confined space. There was no time to hesitate. We immediately took control of the situation step by step, dealing with each animal decisively to avoid any possible risk. After finishing at the first location, another trap was placed along the eastern edge of the forest, where the tall grass had been flattened and tracks covered the ground. At first, the location seemed absolutely perfect. But by the following morning, things had not gone as expected. The trap had been triggered, yet only a few hogs remained trapped inside, while most of the herd had escaped. Freshly torn ground surrounding the area showed that the animals had become far more cautious. That mistake forced us to completely change our approach for the next trap placements.
Back up. We have 3 that when we baited.
But everything truly escalated at the final trap, set beside a deep lake hidden within the pine forest. It was the largest water source in the area, and the wild hogs returned there almost every night. Everything had been carefully prepared before we left, but no one could have predicted what happened next. That night, my phone suddenly received an alert from the camera mounted on the trap. The moment I opened the live feed, I immediately realized the situation had gone far beyond our original expectations. There were so many wild hogs packed inside that they nearly filled the entire steel enclosure.
All right, here.
Violent impacts echoed through the Texas. The steel frame shook continuously under the weight of the panicked herd trapped inside. Without wasting another second, I immediately headed back into the forest that same night. The closer I got to the trap site, the heavier the atmosphere became. Chaotic noises echoed across the pitch-black woods. When my flashlight swept across the trees ahead, the entire scene finally came into view more clearly than ever before.
This is... All right, here we go, guys. We got the gate open. Hey, 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 hey. Yeah. Yeah. You're all over my phone.
That I could not afford a rush in that situation. Even the smallest mistake could send everything out of control instantly. So I kept my distance, carefully watched every movement, and began handling the situation one step at a time with complete focus. The work continued for hours in an atmosphere so tense it was almost suffocating. Only after the last wild hog had been removed from the trap did the forest finally begin to fall silent.
Come on, kick them around, son. Keep going. Holler at them. Get in there. Hey, get in there. Probably another.
When I looked down at the fresh mud surrounding the edge of the lake, I understood one thing clearly. This confrontation was far from over. Out there were still fresh tracks, movement routes we had not yet monitored, and forests we had never even stepped into. That night's operation may have ended, but the battle against the wild hogs in Texas had clearly only just begun.
Under the moon's glow, the wild boar ruled.
That is right there, buddy.
What would you do if you woke up one morning and discovered that the land around your farm was covered in wild boar tracks? Mud trails torn apart, fences bent out of shape, and rows of soil ripped open as if a storm had swept through overnight. That was the moment I realized this nightmare was far from over. I had believed the wild boars were gone after the last round of traps. But that night, they came back in greater numbers, more aggressive than before, and seemingly no longer afraid of anything. A chilling thought suddenly crossed my mind. What if they had returned for revenge? Of course, it was only a feeling, but after seeing the destruction they caused, I understood that if I didn't act immediately, this entire farm could be destroyed within just a few nights. Newly planted fields would be trampled flat, the irrigation system would be torn apart, and the livestock would live in constant panic. I had no choice left except to set more traps and stop them before it was too late. That same afternoon, I began inspecting the entire area surrounding the farm. I followed the narrow trails leading into the forest, studying the fresh tracks pressed into the damp soil and the patches of earth that had been torn up during the night. Just by looking at the way they moved, I could almost predict the herd's direction and habits. Wild boars always return to places where they feel safe, and if I wanted to control them, I had to stay one step ahead. As darkness slowly fell, I carried all the equipment out of storage and joined the others as we moved toward the marked locations. The first trap was placed at the edge of the western forest, right beside a trail covered in fresh tracks. I secured the steel frame into the ground, carefully checked the trap door mechanism, and scattered bait around the entrance to lure the boars inside. The scent quickly spread through the cold, damp night air. After that, we continued setting more traps around the farm before finally leaving, abandoning the area to an eerie and unsettling silence. The next morning, I froze the moment I reached the very first trap. Inside the steel cage was an entire group of wild boars packed together in panic. They kept slamming against the metal bars, creating deafening crashes that echoed through the forest. But what truly made me tense was what I found when I approached the second trap.
I got 1, 2. Aren't you cute? Let's go. Come on, pig.
Even from a distance, I could already hear the chaos erupting inside. As I got closer, the scene before me was far worse than anything I had imagined. The wild boars inside were almost completely out of control. The largest one repeatedly hurled itself at the trapdoor with all its strength, causing the steel frame to shake violently with every impact. Behind it, the others shoved and trampled over one another in blind panic. For a moment, I honestly thought the entire trap was going to explode apart. The third trap was even more horrifying. Long before I reached it, I could hear a deep, relentless pounding sound, as if some massive force was desperately trying to break free. When I finally stepped closer, I could hardly believe my eyes. The cage was packed so tightly with wild boars that there was almost no empty space left. They were crushed against one another, forming one giant mass of chaos. The ones in front kept smashing violently into the steel bars while those behind continued pushing forward, placing tremendous pressure on the entire trap.
Trying to keep you alive here.
The final trap surprised me in a completely different way. Inside were mostly young wild boars. They were smaller, faster, and constantly shoving through the cramped space. Even though they were not strong enough to create impacts like the adults, I understood that they were the real long-term threat. If they grew up and continued breeding, this farm would never know another peaceful night again. After checking every trap, I stood silently in the middle of the torn-up land and stared toward the distant forest. But the longer I looked, the more I realized something even more terrifying. This was not the end. Out there, hidden within the darkness of the woods, there were undoubtedly more herds silently watching. And sooner or later, they would return.
As night fell, massive footprints began appearing all across residential neighborhoods. Windows were shattered, belongings scattered in broad daylight, and the sense of peace people once knew disappeared completely. Wild boars were no longer showing up here and there. They were taking over spaces where people lived. Every heavy step and every low grunt carried the same warning. The boundary between humans and nature was slowly collapsing, bringing a direct threat to everyday life. Residents tried driving them away with loud noises, temporary fences, and small traps, but the boars had already grown bold and difficult to fool. Leg-hold traps were tested first, but the results fell far short of expectations. Each trap could only catch one animal at a time, while the rest of the sounder continued roaming freely, tearing through crops and damaging infrastructure. It quickly became clear that isolated measures were no longer enough. A larger, more organized strategy was needed. Now the ground was covered in tracks stretching from orchards all the way to the edge of paved roads. Hundreds of boars moved through the area every night, following routes they had memorized from previous incursions. Fresh prints still wet from the overnight rain showed the herd had passed through only hours earlier. After studying the signs, the control team decided to build a massive oval-shaped corral trap, large enough to guide the entire sounder inside at once, allowing for more effective population control while reducing the danger to nearby residents. Heavy support posts were driven deep into ground in perfectly straight lines, built to withstand the extreme force of a charging herd. The surrounding soil was packed tightly because even a small weak point could compromise the entire structure. The posts were positioned outside the fencing, so the impact force would transfer directly into supports instead of the mesh panels. As construction continued, technicians inspected every joint and every section carefully, making sure there were no gaps, since the stability of the entire trap depended on that foundation. Steel panels were curved into a continuous rounded enclosure, increasing durability, while reducing the chance of boars finding leverage points to ram against. Sharp corners and angled sections were more likely to fail, and could also injure the animals, making the circular design the safest and most effective option. Once the panels were installed, they were reinforced against nearby trees with heavy steel wire. Twisted connections remained on the outside, while the interior stayed smooth, preventing boars from slamming directly into exposed joints that could break apart or create additional danger. The trap gate became the most critical part of the entire system. Its width, roughly 24 inches, was designed to match the shoulders of an adult boar, wide enough to guide them inside, while still controlling the flow of movement. The gravity-operated gate was tested repeatedly. Once a boar entered, the door would swing shut behind it, locking the entire sounder safely inside the enclosure. Bait was spread around the entrance to make the animals feel comfortable approaching without suspicion, reducing panic and helping keep the herd calm as they moved into the trap. For herds that already invaded the area multiple times, remotely activated traps proved far more effective. Infrared cameras monitored every animal closely, waiting until the entire sounder was fully inside before triggering the system. This method not only improved safety, but also allowed the team to control the entire group at once, reducing the risk to nearby neighborhoods. Through the live monitoring system, technicians could study the boar's behavior in real time, fine-tune the gate mechanism, and ensure the trap operated with precision. Earlier attempts using leg hold traps had only captured isolated individuals and failed to stop the larger groups, forcing the team to rethink their entire strategy. The massive corral trap not only guided the herd safely into one location, but also allowed simultaneous containment of the entire population moving through the area. Every time the trap was inspected, technicians carefully observed the behavior of the sounder, adjusting cable tension, funnel height, and entry flow to keep the system operating at peak efficiency. After the large corral trap system was deployed alongside remote monitoring technology, field reports showed a dramatic drop in damage across the area. Proper wildlife management could not eliminate every risk entirely, but it kept the threat under control, protecting crops, property, and the safety of local residents. The system also helped maintain ecological balance, reducing conflict between humans and wildlife, while applying lessons learned from earlier leg hold trap failures to future operations. If you found this approach interesting, leave a comment and share your thoughts. And don't forget to follow the channel for more intense stories about modern wildlife control. Feral hogs are no longer just wildlife. In many U.S. states, they have become a serious ecological and economic disaster. Each year, agricultural damage is estimated to exceed $670 million, with total economic losses approaching $800 million. They trample crops, destroy fences, pollute water sources, and put tremendous pressure on native ecosystems. What's even more alarming is that the feral hog population continues to grow by 18 to 21% annually. Without timely control, this explosive growth could quickly exceed our capacity to manage it. To tackle this escalating crisis, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, launched a large-scale initiative called the Feral Swine Control Pilot, FSCP. The initial budget was $75 million for a period from 2019 to 2023 and has since been extended through 2025. Texas received the largest portion of this funding, as it is considered the epicenter of the invasion. In 2019 alone, over $16.7 million was allocated to a series of feral hog control projects in the state. Additionally, in 2021, Texas received another $1.5 million for expanded projects. Total annual funding from federal and state sources is estimated to range between $30 and $40 million. However, the largest expenses still fall on local landowners. According to the Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute, property owners in Texas spend more than $130 million annually on fences, traps, and professional control teams. The actual cost is often far higher than government support. With such enormous resources, Texas employs a multi-layer control strategy, with smart traps being the most effective weapon. These modern trap systems are equipped with surveillance cameras and connected to mobile devices, allowing landowners to monitor the herd remotely in real time. They do not trigger the trap at the first sign of a few hogs, but patiently wait until the entire herd enters. This is crucial because feral hogs are highly intelligent and quick learners. Capturing just a few individuals can make the rest extremely wary, and they may never return. A single mistake can undermine the entire control campaign for an extended period. Therefore, the goal is not to eliminate hogs individually, but to trap the entire herd in a single activation. Alongside large net traps, many areas in Texas also use steel box traps to manage smaller herds or hogs near residential areas. These traps are placed along familiar travel routes, near feeding grounds or water sources. The interior often contains fermented corn and strong-smelling bait to attract the hogs over several consecutive days. Once the feral hogs become accustomed and start entering regularly, the drop gate is activated. The trap frame is made of thick steel with a secure locking mechanism to withstand the force of panicked adult hogs. Though smaller than the giant circular traps, these box traps play a vital role in Texas's overall control strategy. However, despite spending hundreds of millions of dollars and employing various methods, Texas has not fully contained this invasion. The challenge lies in the hog's extreme reproductive rate, remarkable adaptability, and widespread distribution across the state. The story in Texas is no longer just about feral hog control. It reflects a growing ecological imbalance caused by invasive species and highlights the limits of human ability to manage nature. Ultimately, one question remains: can humans truly control nature, or are we merely chasing the consequences of our own making?
Like clockwork.
Imagine a farmer stepping outside at sunrise only to discover that an entire season's worth of hard work had vanished overnight. Crops torn apart, fences flattened, and the ground looking like it had been ripped through by a massive bulldozer. The culprits were wild hogs, millions of them spreading across the American heartland and causing more than $2.5 billion in damage every year. But out in West Texas, locals developed a control method so clever that it quickly grabbed national attention, even sparking heated debates among politicians who almost never agree on anything. Last summer, a farmer near Highway 87 was shocked to find more than 50 acres of land destroyed in a single night. Security cameras captured around 30 wild hogs, each weighing over 220 pounds, violently tearing up the soil with their sharp tusks. One careless move and these animals can charge straight at a person with terrifying speed. This is no longer just a Texas problem. From the East Coast to the West Coast, wild hogs are destroying pastureland, contaminating water sources, and spreading dangerous diseases that threaten both livestock and humans. While lawmakers continued arguing, farmers around Lubbock had already run out of patience. They turned to a technique capable of wiping out entire sounders in one silent night: massive corral trap systems. It all started with reading the signs left behind on the ground: tracks, torn up soil, and muddy creek banks where the hogs gathered after dark. One farmer identified a hotspot along the Brazos River where the hogs showed up almost every single night.
Like clockwork, Ark.
He built a giant circular trap nearly 40 feet wide and about 5.5 feet tall, welded together from heavy steel panels strong enough to withstand high-speed impacts. Inside, he scattered corn and ripe fruit as bait, but he didn't close the gate right away. For an entire week, the hogs were allowed to enter and leave freely until they fully believed the trap was completely safe, like an unlimited midnight buffet. Then came the critical moment. Sitting in his living room, the farmer monitored every movement through his phone. The instant the last hog stepped fully inside the enclosure, sometimes more than 40 animals at once, he tapped the screen. The steel gate slammed shut immediately. Panicked hogs crashed violently into the walls, creating deafening bangs in the middle of the night, but the entire structure held firm. In just one night, 32 wild hogs were captured, and the field was finally saved. In 2024 alone, the Lubbock area removed more than 60,000 hogs using this method. But the battle is far from over. A single sow can produce 2 litters a year, with 6 to 10 piglets each time. That's why farmers no longer rely on corral traps alone. They now combine electric fencing, motion-activated lights, and nighttime surveillance cameras. The results have been dramatic. Crop damage dropped by as much as 35% after only one season. It proved that strategy and patience can sometimes be far more effective than brute force. Meanwhile, the controversy hasn't gone away. Some recreational hunters argue that large-scale trapping systems are ruining their sport. Ecologists warn that wild hogs are causing severe damage to native ecosystems. And lawmakers still can't agree on whether more funding should be poured into these control programs. But for the farmers, there's no time left to wait. They quietly continue protecting the land their families have worked for generations. And it's not happening only in Texas. Similar stories are unfolding in South Carolina, Kansas, and dozens of other states across America. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Wild hogs have proven that they are not only incredibly powerful, but also highly intelligent, and the fight against them will remain a major challenge for many years to come.
Take a good look at this mess. The moment a pack of wild hogs crossed through David's fence, their fate was practically sealed. While his family was away on vacation, these unwanted intruders turned the property into a complete disaster zone. The yard was torn apart, the grass ripped to pieces, and everything looked like it had been hit by a violent overnight raid. For any homeowner, coming back to a scene like this would be enough to push their patience to the limit. But instead of simply getting angry, David chose to respond with strategy. He carefully began planning how to capture every single hog responsible for destruction. What David was dealing with in his own front yard was really just a small glimpse of a much bigger crisis happening across America. As hungry wild hogs move from suburban neighborhoods into commercial farmland, the financial damage escalates fast. According to USDA, feral hogs cause more than $2.5 billion in agricultural damage every year in the United States. In a single night, one large sounder can destroy between 10 and 20 acres of farmland, leaving farmers with losses exceeding $12,000 in only a few hours. That's exactly why professional trapping systems are no longer optional for many landowners. They've become an absolute necessity. What makes this even more interesting is that these hogs picked the worst possible property to invade. They unknowingly wandered on the land owned by David, a man who built an incredibly effective homemade trapping system. Even though it was completely self-built, the trap could easily compete with expensive commercial systems on the market. The entire structure was welded together using heavy-duty livestock steel panels, reinforced with solid barriers that formed a steel fortress standing over 5 feet tall. Once the massive gate dropped, there was almost no chance for a trapped hog to escape. Powered by a reliable electric winch, the system operated like a near-zero escape machine. As nightfall approached, David prepared what would become the hog's final meal. He used a powerful fermented corn mixture, the kind of bait wild hogs find almost impossible to resist. But the most important part of the operation was the infrared trail camera watching everything remotely. Wild hogs are extremely cautious animals and notoriously difficult to trap, so David patiently monitored every movement through the live feed. He didn't rush to trigger the gate too early. Instead, he allowed the entire sounded end of the trap and feed comfortably. Only when greed completely overpowered their caution did David finally hit the electronic trigger. Within a split second, the massive steel gate slammed shut. Just like that, the game was over. Even after the trap successfully closed, David continued handling the situation with patience and control. Instead of panicking the animals, he calmly guided them into a specialized transport trailer. This approach not only reduced stress on the captured hogs, but also made the entire transport process safer and far more efficient. In states like Texas, licensed hog buyers will often drive directly to farms to purchase mature animals. That allows trappers to recover their bait and operational costs while helping landowners eliminate a serious problem from their property. This is a highly practical, effective, and incredibly smart method. Not only does it outsmart the natural instinct of wild hogs, but also solves the problem in a cleaner, faster, and more sustainable way over the long term. For David, controlling feral hogs isn't just about protecting his own land. It's about helping other farmers who are suffering major losses every single day. Now, put yourself in the shoes of an American farmer. Imagine walking outside tomorrow morning and seeing your entire field destroyed overnight. If you were facing losses like this, what would you do? Would you spend the extra time live trapping the entire sounder to keep the area free from blood and warning scents? Or would you hire professionals to remove them immediately before the damage spreads even further? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'll be reading and replying in the next video.
Big problems for homeowners.
Deep inside Florida's vast wetland preserves, where palm forests, dense reeds, and winding waterways stretch across tens of thousands of acres, wild hogs can move almost completely undetected. For months, a wildlife research team led by Daniel Harper has been tracking their movements through the swamp. The group has been studying how these hogs survive and expand their range between marshland forests, protected reserves, and farmland near residential communities. Their biggest goal is to determine whether the hogs are regularly leaving the wilderness and moving into nearby farms and neighborhoods. One of the biggest concerns is the growing agricultural damage across Florida. Farmers report that cornfields, peanut farms, and grazing pastures are being torn apart overnight.
Apps are being deployed to catch more hogs.
But an even greater threat comes from the possibility of disease spreading to the feral hog population. Experts fear that as their numbers continue to rise, The animals could carry dangerous diseases closer to livestock operations and residential areas. Wild hogs are now appearing near people more often than ever before, with massive tracks showing up beside highways, near neighborhoods, and even around open garbage sites. Recently, biologists have become especially concerned about the possibility of African swine fever entering the United States through contaminated food products or illegal transportation activity. Although the disease has not appeared in Florida, outbreaks around the world have pushed wildlife officials to increase surveillance efforts. The virus spreads extremely fast and can survive in animal carcasses, mud, or contaminated food sources for long periods of time. Because of that, tracking the hogs' established travel routes has become a top priority, so high-risk areas can be isolated quickly before any outbreak spreads further. Data collected from infrared cameras and tracking devices eventually allowed the research team to map the exact travel corridors most frequently used by wild hogs throughout the Florida wetlands. The animals do not wander randomly. Instead, they follow familiar pathways along forest edges, canal banks, and soft ground where food is easy to find. After months of monitoring, the team began placing large steel cage traps at key intersections between these routes. Inside the traps, they use fermented corn and strong-smelling bait to lure entire sounders back along their normal paths, while surveillance cameras continue recording throughout the night to study the behavior of each group and determine the best moment to activate the traps. At first, the hogs reacted cautiously to the unfamiliar metal structures appearing deep in the swamp. They constantly stopped to sniff the air, circled the area, and quickly disappeared back into the darkness. Some dominant hogs even returned multiple times just to watch the trap from a distance before the rest of the sounder dared to move closer. But after several days without sensing danger, their caution slowly faded, and the animals eventually began returning to the trap sites almost every night. By understanding these movement patterns so precisely, the research team could calculate the ideal trap locations to control entire groups at once. That becomes especially important if disease outbreaks ever occur in the future, because these traps are no longer used only for research. They are now becoming strategic control points within Florida's growing field surveillance system. As the trapping system became more reliable, researchers were able to collect even more data on the wild hog population, while also building a rapid response strategy in case disease is ever detected among feral animals. traps have now become part of a much larger monitoring network designed to control hog populations along critical travel corridors before they spread deeper into farmland and residential areas. The tracking data also allows researchers to quickly identify the zones that would need immediate containment if infected animals were ever discovered. In the future, studies like this may help Florida manage its exploding wild hog population more effectively while still preserving the fragile natural balance of its swamp ecosystem style.
From the forests located near production areas, groups of wild boars began appearing with increasing frequency. They continuously moved down into fields, open land, and crop areas instead of staying only near the forest edges as before. Each group usually consisted of 3 to nearly 10 animals moving together before quickly spreading in different directions as they entered deeper into the production zones. Residents repeatedly saw the groups crossing fields during both the day and the night. Some groups returned to the exact same locations for many consecutive days and continued expanding their activity range around the agricultural areas. Major damage quickly appeared after repeated waves of wild boar invasions. The soil in the middle of the fields was dug up, leaving long trenches after each passage of the groups. Numerous crop rows were trampled, making many areas difficult to recover in a short time. Even more concerning was that the boars often returned to the exact places that had already been damaged before. In many residential areas, yards and grass fields also began to be heavily torn up. The affected range continued spreading to many other production areas nearby. Many new plots of land that had previously been untouched also started showing footprints and feeding traces left by the wild boars. After the level of damage became more severe, trap systems began being deployed at several key locations around the production areas. Some circular traps were installed on wide open ground in order to hold many animals at the same time when the groups gathered together. Steel frames were firmly secured to the ground to withstand strong impacts when the trapped animals panicked inside. The trap doors were kept fully open to create a natural feeling as the groups approached the baited areas. Some locations also included extra bait around the entrances to lure the groups deeper into the traps. While the trap systems remained in position, monitoring activities continued constantly in order to determine the exact times when the groups appeared. Cameras and observation equipment were deployed around many areas where footprints and feeding traces were frequently found. At night, infrared lights continuously scanned the paths between the fields to record the activity of the groups in the darkness. Drones were also used for aerial observation, helping identify clear movement routes between the forests and the production areas. Multiple monitoring teams took turns checking the trap zones to avoid missing the moments when the groups appeared during the night. During the following appearances, the wild boars gradually moved closer to the baited areas. The first animals usually moved quite slowly and continuously observed their surroundings before entering the traps. They circled around the edges of the traps for a short time before moving deeper toward the food area. Once no danger was detected, the animals behind quickly followed in small groups one after another. The number of animals inside the trap steadily increased after each continuous movement of the groups. As soon as the right moment appeared, the entire trap system was activated almost simultaneously. The steel doors slammed shut extremely quickly and blocked every escape route before the groups could react. Only seconds later, the entire area became chaotic as the trapped animals rushed in different directions searching for a way out. Some animals charged violently into the steel frames but still could not break through the firmly secured structure. Additional traps around the area were also activated to prevent the groups from scattering in other directions during the containment process. After the control operation was completed, the wild boars were kept stable inside the system before being transported away from the production areas. As the number of groups decreased, the destructive pressure on agricultural areas also gradually declined over time. Residents continued monitoring the area in order to reduce the possibility of the groups returning during future waves.